Here we go, let's give this a go. I've got notes. Not traditionally just go off the cuff, but then I forget heaps of stuff. BPC-157. What is it? Well, it's derived from the human gastric system. Body protection compound, BPC. It's synthetically produced from that point. It's like a white powder. It will come to you not hydrated. It will come supplied with bacteriostatic water. You mix that in with the powder. You got to know what you're doing. You got to know everything about all of this sort of stuff. It's not particularly easy to get via a doctor. You know, Dana White, Joe Rogan, all of these people, Thomas DeLauer, they can get it. In the US, I think it's a bit easier, to say the least, than Australia. But the pharmaceutical industry is keeping it at this point. I got to blame someone, let's blame them. It's all conjecture. But it's been kept at the point where it's experimental until they do more studies on it, which is fair enough, I suppose. But they've done enough for me. And a lot of smart people utilize it. So I first learned about it through Joe Rogan, and he was discussing it. Gary Brecker has discussed it. Dana White has discussed it. A lot of people have discussed it. The list goes on. You can do your own research on that. The actual sites of where to administer it, you've got to do a lot of research on that as well. There are a lot of good people out there. Merrick Health, gentlemen, is very good. A lot of people are very good at this sort of stuff. It is a particularly easy thing to administer because it's subcutaneous. So you got all your different layers of your fat. You got the subcutaneous level is actually quite a good belly fat and stuff like that is quite beneficial. Adipose tissue is good to have. It's different to visceral fat, and it's different to deep subcutaneous fat. And some things that go intramuscular, and that's a lot more difficult as well, like TRT, testosterone. That's a little bit more difficult. The easiest end of town is the sub-Q. So your belly fat, they say that BPC-157 goes systemically into your system once it's injected into your subcutaneous. So it doesn't really matter whether or not you put it into the site, such as in my case was my one particular knee. A chronic problem had developed, an acute problem had developed from a really big Baker's cyst. The sort of Baker's cyst when the lady doing the ultrasound calls in other people to come and have a look at it because it's like a one-in-a-lifetime opportunity to see something. It was like people watching The Elephant Man. It's like, oh my God, how's that thing so big? Anyway, we digress. An example of what you might get is a 5 milligram vial of this white powder and a vial of bacteriostatic water, or in my case was this anabolic monster was the actual product. I got it, via my own supplies, whatnot that I trust. But where you get it from is going to be the most important thing in a sense that as long as it's BPC-157 and it's like sterile and the water's sterile, you're all good. There's pretty good chance of that being the case if you're dealing with someone as reputable. You can get this worldwide in various ways. I'm not going to get into all of that. I get myself into enough trouble as it is. I don't have the algorithm, put it that way. Now, I'm not affiliated with any doctors or anything like that, so I consider myself just able to take on a little bit of heat, I guess. So anyway, 5 milligrams, you get a peptide app from there on in, and what you're going to work out is how much water to put into your bacteriostatic water into your powdered BPC-157. In case I used about 3 mil, I'm pretty sure I was using 3 mil. All right, so now you've got it. Now you've got to use a peptide app to work out how much of that vial now of of substance of BPC, hydrated BPC-157 that you are now going to, you punch in what type of syringe you use. So now this is a whole world where people don't understand. I didn't understand, had to work it out myself. So you've got, very often you could get a needle with, it says increments of 10 to 100. So you've got 10 increments there, and you'll work out from that app. And for one, you'll input what was the starting strength of your product, like 5 milligram, and then how much water you put into it and how much you want to end up as strength, and then it'll tell you how many increments, what part of the increments, and then you'll use 1 needle per application and throw it away. Now where you put it, I say belly fat's probably the easiest, but I did know how to just go underneath the skin and go to the knee itself. And you know, the pain relief and the injury repair was quite dramatic. I've talked to people about this before, and people, pretty broken people at the broken end of the working class, gets pretty broken. Once you get past 50, particularly past 55 and stuff like that, and you've had a really hard life that's ruined your knees or your shoulders or your back and stuff like that, don't worry, mate. I've seen some people have some improvements that are just incredible. I only just hear about it, sort of thing. I'm not a doctor and I don't play one on the internet. There's a famous quote from Tim Ferriss, who I've said before is my earliest, is my number one influence, because when I read the 4-Hour Week and I started hearing about his incredible opinions based on his own N=1 studies on himself, which he was famous for, N=1 studies on himself, Tim Ferriss was. So I don't play a doctor on the internet. Those are scrubs behind me though. That's another story. I mean, I just want to present information in a way that it's a little bit applicable, or I've got to find it. Barbara O'Neill's influenced me a lot. Put it this way, I have cayenne pepper in the house all the time because of Barbara O'Neill, and she had this wonderful quote on one from the Bible about something about wisdom is easy for those that understand. Yeah, it was beautiful. I should have researched it. I might put it into the notes. It was wonderful. I just want to make the information somewhat applicable. If you're dealing with an injury that's not easily going away, that extra circulation, it's called angiogenesis. That means that Genesis kind of, in the medical sense, means creation, maybe. It means like growth, maybe. It means like, say in this case, capillaries where they weren't capillaries before. Because some areas have got a lot of problems with vascular problems, circulation problems. Knees are notorious for having bad circulation. Shoulders, of course, too. So if you can get some angiogenesis, if you can get some growth of capillaries and all this, everything else that goes in, because it's not just capillaries, for this circulation and whatnot, you've got arteries, which capillaries are the fine ends of them, and then you've got veins to get it all back to the heart, whatnot. You've got lymph. So there's a lot going on, and you want that circulation, which would be fantastic. And he's saying that it could promote growth hormone as well, which is great as well. Now, a lot of people, anecdotal evidence is out there. Go looking for it. Try to see if you can find somebody that you trust. I mean, I, of course, heard all of this first from Joe Rogan, but then Gary Brecker. Now, Gary Brecker talks up the, in a different sense, both of them, the best, the cheapest, the easiest, the best by far is to go in through the sub-Q injections of BPC-157, body protection compound 157, but there's also an oral version of it. It's a little bit more expensive, and it's kind of not really for injuries. I don't know. There doesn't seem to be even too much of the anecdotal and whatnot that's going to help with that. But Gary Brecker from 10X Health, who pulled Dana White out of his health predicament. He suggests that the oral version is good for your gut biome. It's good for, repairing leaky gut. So it is good, but it's out of my budget. When I need it, I'm going to be getting the injectable variety. I have my own supplier. That's for me. That's not for me to talk about. That's my own business. Anyway, I hope, you see me looking at my notes. I didn't, but I did write them, so it was kind of maybe a little bit in my head. I could spend 10 more minutes about this, but around 10 minutes I tried to pull it down. Those needles, like they're 29 gauge, or as they get bigger, they get finer and finer. And if you're really worried about it, make sure it's a 31. It could be a 31 with a small 6 length of the needle. 13's probably more recommended, 12.5 quarter inch, but 6, I think 6 will get you out, and it's smaller and it's not that hard. And I'm not a doctor. You do your own thinking. Don't blame me for anything. The only thing I'm guilty of is being quirky. Nah. I'm not trying to hurt anybody. I'm trying to help people. You have to do your own thinking. Self-education is up to you. Your own gut biome means that, and everything like this means that you've got different cravings. You've got your own psychological things. You might have an injury that might, so someone like Dan Higgins, I discussed this with Dan Higgins, and Dan's like, oh, I don't do anything like that. I don't need to. My injuries are all under control, and that's great. Other people have got a chronic injury that's just not going away, and they're missing out on sleep at times, even, or they're missing out on opportunities to exercise because of the state of their injuries. Maybe they've got a different tolerance for, don't know. But if you're a really rich person, then go through your doctor and have a good doctor. And I'm pretty sure even in Australia you might get away with it. In America, for sure, you seem to be able to get your doctors that can give that sort of stuff for sure over there. I guess it's the same sort of mentality maybe that leads to people over 50 and whatnot also administering TRT, testosterone, which is incredibly cheap, in actual fact. But again, that's intramuscular, that's a different thing. And that's a whole different research thing. It's a whole different mentality to it. It's for a whole different reasons. And you just need to know you. If you need to look into something in particular, you need to look into it. We've seen what happened in certain periods of time, perhaps ones that weren't so far away, that sometimes the big overall system that you should be able to rely on isn't as yet reliable at times. And maybe some of the advices that you get at, say, at a chemist or whatever, that's incredibly corrupt advices at times. They're pushing whatever product is going to help them. Now, do no harm is, first do no harm is the Hippocratic oath that doctors should always take. Interestingly, Dr. Robert Lustig put a spin on it with his group, whatever, he's in San Francisco, but they had produced a series of lectures, a day of lectures, a festival of lectures or something, how do you call it? Called First Do No Farm, because the statistics should be available to consumers, the working class of, a particular drug. All right, show me what the stats are. Does when I start taking this get noticed by insurance people, and all of a sudden they just scrub 10 years off my life? Because I'm telling you, some of this stuff is like that. Gary Brecken used to be in the insurance industry, and if he knew that certain people, like that he had to analyse to see what month of their lives, of what year they're going to die, so that insurance can work out their premiums and whatnot. If he knew that they were on certain pharmaceuticals that a doctor had given them, or a range of pharmaceuticals that they're on, then he just downgrades their life expectancy automatically. So first do no farm, PHARM, is actually quite profound. But again, it's all up to everybody to believe what they want to believe. I'm just offering whatever this is. It's a discussion. I don't want to convince anyone of anything. It's not my thing. You do whatever you want, mate. If I had a bad injury, I know what I'll do, but that's up to me. And I'm not telling you to do anything. I'm telling you. It's experimental at this point. It's kind of animal studies is where it's at. I'm not sure how the range of how many human studies, but just because something hasn't got human studies on it, don't think that shouldn't have human studies on it, because it should have more human studies on it. That's a fact. It doesn't, and they're mucking around with animals and whatnot. But a lot of anecdotal evidence is out there, and there is the studies themselves, whatever is actually going through these animal models and whatnot. It's looking good. So I'm just going to put a second part to this for you. Number one, whilst it's not like as hard as what heroin addicts and whatnot have, because they got to get into your blood, it's still not nothing. It's not nothing. And there's a chance for infection, and you got to actually avoid blood vessels. So really, the official way to do it is to go in and pull back and see whether or not you see any blood. And that's what, controversially, what they should have been doing with certain other injections that were mass given to people, whatnot. They were meant to have done that step, and often they missed it, and that could have been leading to the product going to the wrong part of the system, the human system, which is not good. I don't want to get into anything else. I really don't. I'm going to struggle with all of this. I want this all to work, and I'm going to struggle not getting attacked as it is. And I'm not Joe Rogan. When I get attacked, I get mauled. I've got enough problems of having a little bit of autism and trying to work out technology and programs and dealing with the public at a high level. Like when you're a YouTuber, you start to have to understand a lot about human psychology. But I wanted to end this time on this one with a quote, not a quote, from a reference from Barbara O'Neill. From if you put into YouTube Barbara O'Neill insomnia, right at the start, as she starts to explain, and this quote's applicable to Barbara O'Neill, but I'm one step away from her, like further, about 4 steps away from her. She can explain things. She really can. So for her, here's the quote. I'll stop talking. Barbara O'Neill, Proverbs 14, verse 6. Knowledge is easy to him that understands. That's how I wrote it down. To him that understands. Maybe it's to those that understand. Okay, so my part, her part is that she'll explain everything. So now you can understand the thing. And now from then on in, it's easy to have that knowledge. My role in all of this is more humble. I'll start a conversation on it. I'll start discussing a few things. It won't be comprehensive. It won't be medical grade. It won't be a lot of things. I'm trying to make it always that it's not harmful, of course. This is controversial. I'm talking about an experimental molecule, a body protection compound 157. It's pretty controversial. I should have avoided it, but I got brought up in my actual life today, so I just thought I'd do a video on it. I don't think it's that controversial. I'm not telling anyone to do anything. I'm not doing anything like that. I just believe in self-education, and I am just closer. I am so close to the working class. That's all I am, really. I am the working class. I mean, at the end of the day, a lot of working class people wear scrubs. Anyway, you take care. Look after yourself. Believe in yourself. There's a lot more information coming, so understanding health I'm very positive now. I've stopped promoting RFK, leaving them all to it now. After all, I am Australian. I did do a fair bit. I think they're going to come in with a landslide anyway. And hopefully some of this corruption and everything can come out of the pharmaceutical and medical and food industry. The corruption in the food industry, it's bad, man. Honestly, I think about it sometimes and cry.